Hey everyone, welcome back to our movie news. Now, I watched Rebel Moon Part 2 again last night, making that my second viewing, and I have realized I have some more issues with it. In my review, I gave the movie an 8 out of 10, but that has dropped since watching it again, and in my previous video for Rebel Moon, I mentioned some of my issues I had with the film. But today, this is basically going to be a movie breakdown discussing the scenes I liked and the scenes I would change or expand upon. Now, the first act was very good. We saw Noble return and saw how the villagers and rebels mixed in together. That was a great start. Everything up until the battle begins was really good, however I really needed it to be more fleshed out. Somehow Cora and Gunnar are now a couple, even though Cora had said love was beaten out of her, and I was expecting more of an internal struggle with her. Why has she suddenly gone from rejecting love to being all about love? There needed to be more of a visual explanation for that, and I don't think one battle and one sweet line from Gunnar would change her whole approach to love. What I would have preferred was maybe that Admiral Noble was actually taking a bit longer to recover, possibly not conscious until 3 weeks before they were originally supposed to pick up the grain from Velt, which would mean the village had quite a lot of time before they knew Noble was still alive, and over that time we could see Cora and Gunnar's relationship develop, and also see the rebels almost settling into the village. But then Aris gets the call that Noble is still alive and is on his way, and then that way the tension and momentum builds up again as we can see the village rushing to get ready for them. But now we have an extended amount of time before they find that out, which gives us time to see these characters and relationships develop over multiple weeks. And that would be my first change to the movie to really bulk out Act 1. And now within that extra time we have, Cora can still explain to Gunnar how she was framed, and I really did like that scene because it shows how it was an inside job and perfectly displays Balisarius's motivations. But because we have that extra time before they find out that Noble is still alive, we can maybe see Gunnar trying to support her, and that could cause some ups and downs in their relationship. Then we have the villagers and rebels cutting down the wheat, getting ready for Noble's arrival. This was a really beautifully shot scene, and I loved the slow motion within it, and seeing the kid trying to interact with Nemesis was very sweet. And I think my first change to the movie would make that scene more rewarding and emotional, as we were able to spend more time with those characters. And then we had my favorite moment of the entire movie, which was when Sam was giving out the tapestries to the rebels. It was definitely the most beautiful and heartwarming scene for me, but I wanted to see more scenes like that. We then just went to them training for battle, and then the rebels talking about their past, and then suddenly they're fighting. I know this film was the end of Act 2 and beginning of Act 3 in Snyder's full Rebel Moon story, but it doesn't really work for a full movie as well as it could do. I watched it with other people last night and they said it pretty well. The movie is basically them cutting down wheat and then fighting, and that is entertaining, but not as an entire movie. That's like 2/3 of a movie. What I think we really are missing is even more character development, and to be brutally honest, I didn't like the scene where the rebels are sitting down talking about their past. I felt it was a pretty basic way of telling us more about their history. Don't get me wrong, I really liked what we saw from their past, but the execution of getting there was pretty basic. I think that scene should have been closer to the beginning of the movie as well. I think what would have worked better was if after the first day of the rebels and villagers working together to cut down the wheat, they would all be sitting around a large campfire telling stories of their past, connecting the villagers to these rebels who are defending their village. And to instigate us finding out that information, we would maybe have the small child curious in Nemesis asking her about her family, and then the crowd silences as she begins to explain her story. Then that way, it's a more natural way of finding out what happened to these rebels. The curiosity that child has in Nemesis parallels the viewer's curiosity, and in doing so, we become the villagers wanting to know the history of these rebels. And I think that would have been a far more natural and less scripted way of finding that information out, rather than General Titus asking the other rebels who they were before this battle. And also, whilst they were sitting round the campfire telling the stories to the villagers, we could have Jimmy sitting up above listening to what they were saying, and that way, that could be a motivation of him wanting to fight too. He has heard what the Mother World has done to other planets, and that could be a major influence on him. And then after the second day of learning how to fight, later on that night, we could have the barn scene where Sam gives out the tapestries, but it goes on for a bit longer, seeing the heroes discussing their thoughts on tomorrow's battle, and maybe seeing some of them talk to the villagers, possibly having Tarak or Titus talking to the kids who are scared and reassuring them that they will be okay. Something to help yet again connect us to these characters more. And this could also be where we get our final emotional moment between Cora and Gunnar before the big battle, which could wrap up any struggles they had with being in a relationship, as Cora has been struggling with it over the past couple of weeks since returning to Velt. The scene from the following day where Cora is talking to Noble is brilliant though, a fantastically executed scene that really helped build the anxiousness. I was scared for what Noble was going to do because he was really unpredictable, and the beginning of the action was done very well. And the overall battle was very cool anyway. Even without my changes to the earlier part of the movie, I still think Act 3 was very cool. But I think bulking out the first 2 acts would allow Act 3 to feel more natural and satisfying. However, I was hoping for a bit more of a struggle. I thought the villagers and rebels were able to do everything a bit too easily. They were able to blow up all the ships and take down a lot of the soldiers with little training and not much difficulty, and I needed more risk to get me on the edge of my seat. Tarak was able to take down soldiers with just axes, which was really cool to see, but once again, it made the soldiers feel less of a threat, and Cora was able to glide through the ship and do exactly what she needed to do with virtually no obstacles. She took down every soldier with ease until Noble, and I felt we could have really boosted the tension by having her take down a really big threat on her way back to the ship that once again would have had me on the edge of my seat. Everything pretty much went according to plan until confronting Noble. And I also think some characters I cared most about were kind of wasted. Nemesis needed to have more screen time, and I think my earlier changes would have helped her death have a greater impact to the viewer. And the same goes for Darian Bloodaxe in the first movie. I was hoping somehow, some way, he could have come back, but now seeing this movie and hardly seeing anything of him in both movies when he was described as this big threat to the Motherworld was really underwhelming. Instead, I think he should have been seriously injured in part 1, and just when everything seemed lost, he returned alongside Jimmy, and they could have turned the tide of the battle together, with his sister bringing reinforcements to help with air support. It could have been this really emotional moment of brother and sister leading the rebellion with Jimmy against the Motherworld army, and we could have seen some awesome dogfights between rebel jets and Motherworld jets, and that could have even made the dreadnoughts distracted enough to delay them from trying to blow up the village and allow Cora to set the bombs. That way, everything could have felt more intertwined and also felt like the rebels really would have been the underdogs until the backup arrived. But instead, everything kind of went to plan, and so there wasn't too much pushback on what they were trying to do. With these kinds of fights, you need to have that fear for your heroes, that you really are scared for them, but Cora did everything on her own and was barely challenged, and other than Nemesis, all the rebels were fine too. Now I think the final sliding battle between Cora and Noble was awesome. That was such a cool fight scene, and I really wouldn't change anything about that at all. I would say that it was a little convenient that the ship was still intact for them to fly out of, but I'm not too bothered about that, as the fight scene beforehand was really cool. But as for the ending of the movie, I think the dialogue was a little wooden and felt too easy, a bit like the table scene, but honestly, I don't really know how I would change it. I just feel like because there is such a gap in knowledge of what the movies tell us about Princess Issa, that her still being alive feels a little convenient, so I would probably just try and change that around, but that's just a little nitpick. Overall, I still really enjoyed the film. It's a fun, epic action movie with awesome visuals, but I think there were a couple of opportunities where they could have made the movie better with very simple changes, and what I have mentioned here in this video are the changes I would make. And based on my second viewing, I would drop my original 8 out of 10 to maybe a 6.5 out of 10. I know that may sound dramatic, but if we look at my graph of what each rating out of 10 means to me, we can see that my new rating moves the movie to the high end of good, bordering very good, rather than amazing. So still not bad at all, but I think think it could have been better. Maybe just adding 30 minutes onto it to dedicate more time to building these characters out and helping the audience feel more for this story. The action is there, but a chunk of the character development is missing for me. Hopefully the director's cuts can solve that, but I'm here to judge the movies that we have right now, and as someone who cares about the Rebel Moon universe and who enjoyed the movie, I think these changes I made would make me love the film a lot more. But make sure to let me know your thoughts on my changes in the comments below. But that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I hope to see you here again soon, so until then, have a great day. Bye!